Looks good.
Well, just a little bit about me. My name is Gorgas. I am originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Kind of bounced around, working in environmental education centers in Pennsylvania, New York, Virginia, and most recently Savannah, Georgia. Um, I really got inspired when I was in Pennsylvania. Learned a lot about like this kind of thing, like citizen science, and I've tried to bring it to other places as I've kind of moved on. And here in Wisconsin, I'm working as a residence hall director, so a little bit of a different field, but it's nice to kind of talk about this kind of stuff because I'm still kind of doing it, but I don't have the same kind of outlet that I used to have. So hopefully it's yeah interesting to you all, and maybe it'll inspire you to go out and be citizen science yourself, apart from what you already do. So kind of the three pillars of citizen science with birds, at least in my kind of realm, are going to be Project FeederWatch, uh, Project Nestwatch, both through Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And then the data from that all feeds into eBird, which I believe most of you already probably use if you're in the birding community and whatnot. But it's all kind of connected. They all trade data back and forth, and make sure that everybody's informed about trends and whatnot, and all the data is kind of stored in the same place. So there's some seasonality to it. Obviously, eBird you can do all year round. Um, I always tell people like the reason I love birding is because no matter where you are in the world, there's birds. You could be in the middle of the ocean, and there's Jaegers and shearwaters, birds that live like exclusively in that ocean. You could be in the tundra and you're seeing snowy owls, Arctic terns, things like that, and then deserts, canyon or cactus wren, Gila woodpecker, things like that. Anywhere you are, there's birds, and just a cool thing to be able to identify the things around you. Um, a lot. There's such an adaptable group of animals. They've learned to live in all climates. So kind of a cool thing on that. Project Feeder Watch is typically like November to April. Obviously, you can keep your feeders up all year round, but Project Feeder Watch mainly focuses on kind of the wintering bird species, um, the occasional like predator species as well that comes in and goes after your feeder birds and things like that. But occasionally hummingbirds as well. Like I think in the southern states they'll include hummingbirds. You can put a hummingbird feeder up, but if there's a hummingbird here right now, it's probably not doing so great. So we're hopefully not going to be seeing any of them. Because they probably um, won't make it through the winter kind of thing, unfortunately. And then as April kind of comes along, depending on where you are as well, breeding season and nesting season starts kind of in that spring area. When I was in Georgia, we were getting nesting birds like end of February, early March. But I assume up here it's going to be more in the April, May area. And so it kind of shifts gears. And it's just a fun, both of them are both fun projects that you can kind of do in the backyard. And they can be as big or as little as you kind of put your time into. And so I'm going to kind of talk about a little bit about on the slide deck about each project and what you can kind of do with it. And then we're going to actually go to the sites and explore a little bit, so you can kind of get a feel for all that stuff. So Project Feeder Watch, again, it's contributing to citizen science. You can bring birds into your backyard. I think that watching birds at a feeder is like a great way to get people introduced to birding as well. I've been birding since 2019, and so I have a good amount of knowledge about birds that are around, and certainly in the areas that I live, like I can hear a little bit of a blue jay call, and I know that that's what that is. But certainly for grandkids and kids that want to get into it, it's like, all right, cool, let's start with the basic five: robin, cardinal, blue jay, and things like that. So you're bringing them to you. You can sit in your back, like your living room, looking out your window at these feeders and kind of learning those basic birds. It's also an opportunity to kind of supplement their food, because there's so much housing and things like that. Like, we've kind of deforested a little bit of what would be a continuous forest in some of these areas. And so providing that food opportunity, like, these birds are here regardless. So they're wintering birds. It's not like we're keeping Baltimore Orioles and Eastern Phoebes around for the winter where they normally wouldn't. These animals would be foraging and looking for food and catching food that they find in the woods. And we're just kind of providing that opportunity in the space that our house now sits. So kind of filling that gap.
Hey, Graham,
Also, yeah.
I don't know if you where your microphone is, but it's kind of going in and out, a little muffled. I don't know if there's if that you have control over it or not, but we can hear you. It's just kind of going in and out. So
sorry about that. I'll try to get
that's all right.
Is this a little better?
Yeah.
Okay. So ways to join it. We'll go to feederwatch.org here in a second. It is a $25 donation, but with the $25 donation, you get access to the app. Makes it very easy to kind of log everything, and the money goes towards making the app better, promotional materials, things like that. If you're a first-time Project FeederWatch joiner, you'll get a nice identification poster. So that has a eastern and western birds. We're kind of in the middle here, so I think you probably could get either side. But it's seeming more like this is eastern. I'm still learning what the norms are. I've only been here a couple months, but just kind of like a basic, hey, this is what you might see. These are birds that typically come to feeders. And then the basics of the program are you pick 2 days out of the week. You do it all day. So it might be Monday, Tuesday for the winter season. And you count as much as you have time for. So if you're retired and you want to sit there all day and see what birds come to the feeder, great. If you're working, you can sip your coffee while you watch in the morning, and you just log how many hours you actually watched. You're looking for high counts. So you're not counting how many chickadees like came back and forth to the feeder. It's the total number of chickadees that were at the feeder at one time. So when I was in Georgia, we had 49 brown-headed cowbirds hanging out at the feeder. And so that was our high count for the day. It's hard to, unless they're banded birds, you wouldn't necessarily be able to tell if this is the same bird and whatnot, or different birds. And so it's mainly just kind of, if they're all there, you can count them all at the same time, obviously. The app is great. They have the typical birds in your area. They use Merlin with likely birds, things like that. So if you're up here, you're not going to get calliope hummingbird as a potential bird at your feeder. And then they've also added features this year where you can log squirrels that are at your feeder, cats, things like that. So other features, house finch eye disease, I think, is also something that they'll track this year, just because it's been a prevalent issue and they want to kind of see where the trends are going. But each week you'll kind of log, it'll ask snow depth, temperature, sunny, partly cloudy, whatever it might be, and then how many hours and what birds you saw, obviously. And then you can kind of repeat this year to year and see how the trends of the birds that are coming to your feeder kind of change over the years. So we'll pop into kind of FeederWatch site here. So you can kind of join, renew, donate, whatever. This is kind of your sign up. It'll be the same login as you have for eBird if you have an eBird. And they have lots and lots of data that they've already kind of logged. So we'll kind of pop in here for a second. So this is the participant map for 24-25. So tons and tons of locations, and you can't really get down very far. So this is as far as it zooms in. But we already have a lot of sites here in Milwaukee. So that's great data. And so hopefully I'm gonna hopefully add a location myself. I gotta find where I can do it. I'm currently in a dorm on Marquette's campus, so really only house sparrows and rock pigeons here. But still important data, I suppose, if I can get a feeder going. And so one of the cool things you can do is you can see, pop in here, kind of an interactive thing. So these are typically, so there's our cactus friend, people mentioned before. So you can go through, and if you're in the Northeast, it'll kind of bar down. These are all potential Northeastern birds. Obviously, there's some variation. We don't always get evening grosbeaks or red poles, things like that. But all these are like seed-eating birds that could potentially come to your feeder. They also have all food types selected, so you can kind of go through. This is what black oil sunflower seeds might attract, cracked corn, fruit, pulled sunflower seeds. So if you have particular birds that you're looking to attract to your yard, this would be a great feature to kind of look at to kind of pinpoint what you want. If you notice, the blue jay never disappears, so they're going to be a typical bird that most people will get at their feeder because they are not a specialist. They'll eat anything and everything. If you go to other places in the U.S. and want to set up feeders there, they also have like northwestern species, southeast. So this is what we were typically seeing in Georgia. When I was down there, I was on Tybee Island. So different species, obviously, in the winter time, and then southwest. So a little bit of variation depending on where and when you might be attracting the birds. They have identifying things like that. You can look up things that are going on. So the house finch eye disease, if you're not familiar, they kind of get their eyes swollen shut. And so you would be kind of on the front lines of seeing birds that are coming to your feeders with your binoculars. If you see that birds are afflicted by this, you can kind of log that data, and it all gets kind of put in with everything else. And they can kind of look at the trends of, hey, that we've never seen this before in this area. It's clearly spreading and whatnot. We certainly had it in Georgia, but I think the East Coast was one of the first places that kind of showed up. So this is the data that I've collected from Georgia. Obviously, I'm not doing it this year. I'm not there anymore, but I did it for 3 years. And then there's one previous year in here as well. So you can kind of look in and see the place that I was. It was a environmental education center. And so we had dorm 3A, 3B, and we had some feeders outside. And so you can kind of look through and see some rock pigeons, obviously, because it's somewhat suburban or urban. And then lots of brown-headed cowbirds, occasional brown-headed nuthatch, boat-tailed grackles, things like that. I was working when I was doing this, so I didn't get to observe. It was a lot of passive observation, like as I walked into the office, counting the birds that I saw. So a lot of mine are like under an hour, but it's still data, and it's still good data because it's so important to, they call it like patch birding. So it's like one specific location for an extended period of time. Like that's what's so great about UEC doing weekly bird walks year round. Like they know week to week what that population of birds look like. Obviously, like if they show up on a Wednesday and it's a Tuesday walk, they won't necessarily see it, but those one-off birds aren't necessarily as valuable to the data, because if it's a one-off thing, we don't want to misrepresent what the typical would be, kind of thing. Not a lot of snow in Georgia, if you can imagine, so I didn't really mark that much, but up here, I'm sure you'd be marking it. And then they do total individuals observed and then species. So some of the days were higher than others. I think 22, 23 was when I had my 100 cowbirds at the bird feeder. They kind of swarmed out, the one pine warbler hanging out. But just data, full data that is representative of that space over a period of time that they can then loop in with everything else. There's not a lot of like barrier to entry for this. It's put the food out that you think they might like and and whatnot. But just a cool kind of thing to do in your backyard. And you can kind of see the population trends on certain species. So like through the years, you can kind of, I mean, all of this is just a collection of all that data from all those different places. So just, I just think it's cool that you know your data is going somewhere. I haven't explored all of these trends with different species, but I know it's going somewhere that's important, which is kind of cool. So you can also, in your free time, just pop in and they have live feed cameras at 2 different locations. This is the Ontario FeederWatch cam, so you can get some boreal species, which is kind of cool. Certainly not the expectation for you all to put up a live feed cam, but you can enjoy the benefits of some of the other places that have. They also have like some highlights. So a little grouping of evening grosbeaks up there, things like that. So kind of cool. Up in Boreal, obviously this is pretty common, but there are eruption years, if you've ever heard of that, where there's high seed counts or high seed yields, where some of these, like the red poles and the evening grosbeaks and the white-winged crossbills, they move further down because the yield is higher. And so if you're starting to get some of those at your feeder, like we're the boots on the ground seeing them at our backyards kind of thing. The problem with hotspots is that they are very specific locations and they rely on people actually going to them and whatnot. People aren't going to be walking in your backyard, hopefully, and seeing what birds are there. So it just adds more kind of triangulation of where these birds are showing up. So kind of cool way to contribute there. All right. So I'm gonna kind of shift gears to Project Nestwatch. Very similar project, so you'll see a lot of commonality here, but kind of our spring activity once FeederWatch ends. So again, you're contributing to citizen science. It's cool, I think, to see what birds are like using your property or backyard or whatever it might be as their breeding grounds. Obviously, I bet a lot of people have seen robin nests and things like that, but seeing a chipping sparrow nest or like bluebirds using a bluebird box, that's like a cool thing to say, like, oh yeah, like I had that in my backyard. I have a buddy that his parents have a merlin nest in their backyard. Just kind of cool thing to look at. And then if it's something that's really interesting to you, like you get a couple robin or eastern phoebe nests, things like that, maybe you've set up some nest boxes so that you can attract more birds. Join on nestwatch.org. With this one, there's a lot more, it's a lot more strict as far as who's contributing. They want to make sure that you know best practices because we want to be passive observers. The data is important, but it's not so important that we're going to disrupt nesting activity. So there's a code of conduct that you'll have to go over and then a 10-question certification quiz. And I'm actually due for my next one, so I'll kind of show you what that quiz looks like. And you track the nesting progress of the nesting bird in your backyard. So from putting the first couple twigs into the nest box or into the little cup nest in a tree, all the way to like fledging, you can kind of track that progress. So that helps with like trends of like, hey, like we thought that house wrens fledged out in 10 days, but you have an active nest at your house and it was 7 days or whatever it might be. That could be temperature related. Maybe it was a little hotter summer, and so they incubated a lot faster or fledged faster. There was a high food count, so they were able to grow faster, things like that. So all just really cool data to contribute. So pop in a Nestwatch. So this is the Georgia site that I was at. And so we had a couple different locations, probably the coolest of which was our osprey nest. So I was there for 3 years, and there was a year successful before I got there, and then 2 successful while I was there. So the first year they fledged 1 fledgling from about March to June, They had an off year, and then this year, I guess, this past nesting season, they actually fledged 3, which is pretty crazy as far as ospreys go, because typically it's like 1. Like they might lay 2 eggs, and then whatever baby is more viable, they'll feed more, and it's like a kind of sacrificial thing, unfortunately. But that's a lot of the nesting strategy for some of these larger birds. If they have enough food to feed 2, great. But if they don't, they kind of focus on the 1 to at least be successful 1 fledgling. And so this tells us that lots of fish in that creek this year, which is really cool, to be able to fledge 3. It was awesome seeing them all fledge and fly around once they got out. But they ask kind of stipulations on post or pole platforms, so like nest type. So obviously ospreys are platform nesters. They just need a tall object. I don't know if you've ever been down south, but they'll just use light post, and it'll be a stadium light at a football field, and they'll just pile a bunch of sticks on there and call it a nest. And then you have mourning doves that put about 3 twigs in somewhat of a triangle formation, and then call it a nest. Pigeons as well. It's kind of a lackluster looking thing, but you kind of put the GPS, like you use your phone, it logs the GPS location for it. You do, like if it's a bluebird box, you say what direction it's facing, if you have predator guard, baffle, anything like that. So they can kind of see like, hey, this is the makeup of the nest. Was it successful? Was it not? Are these predator guards useful? Are they successful? Things like that. So kind of a cool thing there. We had, I believe this is here, our 4-5 bluebird box. So this one was pretty successful. They actually fledged twice in 1 year. I think it was 2 years ago. So they cranked out like 12 babies, 6 and 6, in 1 nesting season. So it's kind of cool. We don't necessarily know without looking what this kind of looks like. So more of an in-depth knowledge of that breeding practice and whatnot. So like I was talking about the code of conduct here. So just kind of some general rules. A lot of it'll be common sense for people that know birds and whatnot. But making sure that you're not checking it too often. It's every 3 or 4 days. You're being there for less than a minute. So you're minimizing the disturbance. And if you can like passively observe, do. So like with the osprey, it's not like I was climbing the pole and like looking in the nest. I was using the scope viewing from far back, and just watching the babies like pop their heads up and track progress that way. Don't want to check in early morning, things like that, or after dusk. So when the parent is likely going to be there, you don't want to disturb them, and kind of ward them off from sitting on the nest kind of thing. And then the other big thing is when you are checking nests, you don't want to create like a dead end stop. So if every day you walk in, stop, look at the nest, walk back out, you'll create a trail. And so a potential predator could see said trail, follow you or follow your trail, and then find the nest. Especially appropriate for like a ground nesting bird. If you were to find like a turkey nest or anything like that, important. Certification quiz, you can take as many times as you want. Obviously, you want to like know the data or know the correct answers, but pretty quick. There's no fee associated with this one. It's just more about like doing the right thing, and yeah, they don't want you doing anything that they wouldn't do. A lot of people kind of think like, oh, like I'll remove the brown-headed cowbird eggs, things like that, so that the host species is more successful. But unfortunately, that's not allowed. We don't love the brown-headed cowbirds, but they are a native species. It's not like the starlings or house sparrows. And if you are confident, I think they do teach people how to identify and remove starling and house sparrows. It's kind of a lost cause right now because they're so widespread, but if it's something that interests you and it's important to you, they'll teach you how to do it. But here real quick. Okay, sorry about that. They also have a lot of resources on bird boxes themselves. So you can look up what species you'd like to attract to your yard. So let's look at Carolina chickadee. They have a nest box building plan, so you can actually download it and build it yourself. Clearly, they're not in this area, but they'll tell you where to put it, like kind of nesting habitats. Like obviously, black-capped chickadees would be similar up here, but they have all this data partially because of people that have actually submitted their successful nest boxes and nests that have been successful. But it'll give you down to the eighth of an inch of how big these entrance holes are and the nest box itself. So just really cool to be able to look and see, like, hey, I want this specific bird in my yard. What's the likelihood of me being able to do that kind of thing? So that would be a really cool one to have as well, but not very likely. And then kind of the cool part that I got to be a part of with Nestwatch itself is I actually helped install this Nestbox cam, which is at a farm in Mifflin County in Pennsylvania. So we wanted to just be able to view it, which was really cool. We found a barn owl nest, and this is a live feed. Obviously, they're not there right now because it's not nesting season. But we got the data we wanted. We wanted to see like how many chicks were fledged and things like that. But then the extrapolation of that is we were also able to track like, hey, what are these barn owls bringing back to the babies? Oh, that's a meadow vole, that's a rat, or whatever it might be. Yeah, things like that. Shrews, moles. And so we actually had at Shavers Creek like some volunteers record what was actually being brought back, which is really neat. And then if you want to see kind of some of the footage we were getting, there's the adult checking things out as I think we just recently had put the camera in there, so it certainly was interested in it. But they've had 2 or 3 successful years. I mean, they fledged 6 barn owl chicks, and there were lots of people that were checking on the barn owls day in and day out, kind of thing. Cool to hear them do their little screeches and whatnot. And I think they had another successful year last year as well. So really cool to continue to see that happening year in and year out. And then this is the first nestling hatching out. You can see its movement there. So cool to see kind of the progress throughout the years and be able to get, I mean, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to kind of see into that world. And obviously that's not the expectation to kind of put the cameras out. But if it's something you have the ability to do and the want to, it'd be cool to see Eastern Phoebe nest or even a robin nest. I think those are really cool to watch the progress. If your ring camera or whatever might be set up to do so. And then finally our eBird. eBird's super cool. I've really enjoyed using it. A lot of people are tempted to go to those hotspots and whatnot, but creating a location at your house and logging what birds are coming to your house specifically is also great data. The more people logging data, the more we know, like the bigger picture, where birds are going, what days they're showing up for the first time in the spring, when they're leaving, when's the last time we're seeing them in the fall. and your photos and songs that you put into eBird, if you use the media feature, help inform like AI identification tools. So I don't know if you've used the Merlin Bird ID app, where you can go through and you pick the colors of the bird and the size and the location, where it was and what it was doing, and then it'll show like likely birds that might be. eBird photos in the Macaulay library are what inform that AI to kind of figure that out. And you can literally, again, like I said, because they are literally everywhere in the world, you can open the app and log a checklist wherever you might be. And then visit hotspots, ask for new hotspots, things like that. All of that stuff contributes to the citizen science of it. So I'll pop into eBird here. This data, what's really cool is all that gets logged, and you can type, let's do barn owl. So you put in this barn owl, and all these kind of purple spots. Oh, interesting. American barn owl. There we go. Sorry about that. That looks better. Okay. So all these purple spots are places that barn owls have been seen. And so it just creates this collage and map. And this is what informs like field guides to have those range maps. And we want the most accurate data because a field guide from 20 years ago might not be accurate to today's kind of distribution of these species. And then one of the cool things too, you can go in the Explore feature and do some photo and sound quiz. And these photo and sound quizzes are what help new birders learn the way birds look. And so you can go through and do a photos quiz. So we'll pick just Wisconsin. You start the quiz, and this quiz pulls from photos that I've taken, that you've taken, anything that's been entered into this database. Anybody know what this guy is?
One of my favorites.
Yep, real cool. And I saw it over the weekend in Florida, actually. And so this rating, and this is a great photo, is actually then put on someone's photo. So I'll go into my photos and I will filter by highest rating. So this is when I was in Costa Rica. It's gotten 6 ratings from that quiz, and it's a 4-star. So it also, like, there's like a give and a take. So you get people to look at your photos and get the little pat on your back, I guess, that you took a really nice photo from those people doing the quizzes. But all of this, like, I got an email, I think 2 weeks ago from Macaulay that 81 of my photos were used to help inform AI. So I think it's cool that you hear back about what your data is being used for and what your contributions will be used for. Yeah. And then just a couple other little notes. These are kind of like the big picture ones, but then there's these other opportunities to contribute. The big sit is a situation where you sit in a certain location and you bird that location for a 24-hour period, or at least a whole day. And so it's kind of cool to see what birds are moving through the area at different times of the day. Winter raptor survey, something I did in Pennsylvania. You go a certain route. It's very similar to like breeding bird survey and things like that, but you're looking at what raptors are overwintering in certain areas. One of my first exposures to birds, we actually saw a rough-legged hawk, which was absolutely spectacular. It really inspired me to continue in the hobby. Christmas bird count that's coming up. It is a timed, not time, sorry. It is a certain time of the year. And so what they're looking at is, what does this Christmas season situation with birds look like compared to other seasons? Are there as many birds as we saw last year? Are different birds in the area? Things like that. Different trends there. Doing the same time every year helps you see the trend over time, kind of thing, rather than kind of bouncing around. Same with spring and fall big days. It's like fall and spring migration. So it's like a targeted, this time of year, what are the birds doing? Breeding bird surveys, you can participate those in the spring. It's just looking out and logging like birds doing breeding activities. So there's features in eBird that you can list those things. Like I saw a winter wren carrying a twig towards a nest or whatever it might be. Pennsylvania is doing a birding atlas this for the next like 3 years, I think. And so it's logging everything that the birds are doing all year round, from breeding to migration, things like that. So it's an all-inclusive gathering of data. So they're going to publish like an atlas from the 3 or 4 years worth of data. Birding blitzes too. It's like Shavers Creek did one. It was the birding cup, and for 24 hours we went out and counted as many birds as we could in a certain county. And so it's just like an influx of data for that day, with a bunch of people going to different places looking at what birds are doing and where they're at. So just kind of a big dump of data. You can go out and volunteer with mist netting and banding operations. Anytime if you're out birding and you see a band on a bird, you can turn that in to the Ornithological Society. And I actually got like a little certificate. We had a banded snail kite that I saw in Florida in January, and they told me where it was banded, who banded it, how old it is, the sex of the bird, things like that. So kind of a cool where your data is going kind of thing. And then I don't know if they do them up here, but certainly in Georgia, they did shorebird counts. It was kind of a cool, like January, December kind of thing. We went out and counted all the shorebirds on the beach. A lot of them are overwintering down there. So all these opportunities are just ways to get big dumps of data in at one time. And so any contribution that you have to that, even if it's just on a big day, going out in your backyard and, hey, I saw 3 blue jays, an American robin, and a house wren, that's still adding to that data. Those birds, you're the only one that could potentially see those, and they're added to that overall count. Seeing where bird populations are and migration patterns. So with that, are there any questions that anybody might have?